Hi Pedro. Sorry, I just got myself a peace tea to try to balance out the sadness of possibly losing my entire Red Dead Redemption save. We'll just have to see. It is a change of plan today. I was going to do a Red Dead stream, as some of you may have seen from the YouTube stream title, but I hadn't checked once I reinstalled Epic, and it appears my save does not exist on my PC currently. I had to reinstall it. It started at the beginning of the game. We're going to have to figure it out. I'm really tired today. I'm in the midst of trying to sort out my sleep schedule, and more importantly, it is Jane Austen Day, and it's actually the 250th anniversary of her birth, so it's a big one. And as we are reading as we're reading Pride and Prejudice anyway, I thought we could just do a reading stream, as we haven't done one for a while, catch up on some of those chapters that we've not been doing. Hello friends, hello Mezzine, and Nate, and hello Yuvrush, and Kiyoshi, and Tinky. Wow, you're still up. Hello Bradley. I love that video. A hydrate, thank you. We will rebuild. Hello Hugo, and just a random musical fan. Oh, how's the Halo stream? Hi TJ. This is a much nicer greeting. Good day, Usick. Hello, Paranoid. Good. We're fine. The entire Red Dead Redemption 2 save may not exist on my PC anymore. We might have lost that 93% or whatever we had to the PC issue. So, last minute pivot. I was going to read anyway, but I was going to read at the end of the stream, and now it's just going to be a reading stream instead. Hello, JT. I completely appreciate this might not be for everyone, and that is fine. And we are also 13 chapters in, so if you don't want to join halfway through, I do get that. I do have the highlights on my Twitch to catch up. I know, JT. Hello, Curbs. Good morning. Hello, Mr. Magnificent. Hello, Arjax. Can you see it? No, you can't right now, but hey, Texas. So yes, absolutely devastating. Hopefully the save is in there somewhere, because I did think it was all installed on my SSD, so it doesn't really make much sense to me that it would be gone from the C drive. But this has been a colossal mess where none of it's really made sense to me, so it may genuinely be gone, and we'll have to deal with that at another time. Until then, we're going to read, and I hope that's okay. Thank you, Valhalla. Hello. And hello, Dimitris. Hi, Dougal. It's nice to have you. We'll do a stretch to start with. That will be very nice. Thank you, Valhalla. How are you today? I'm just going to do that. We'll do a toe touch, as I haven't done one yet. Will it, though? Do you remember last time, Texas, coming to you with the saves? Time to play The Witcher. No, I know. Worst comes to worst, I did have my game save files that I had to send when I went to Houston, but it's just that I'm way back. We hadn't finished the story. I don't think we hadn't finished the side quests. We hadn't done any of the challenges, so it would be a real struggle. That is great, Paranoid. I'm happy for you. Hello, Sarah. Right, I'm just going to do a stretch, and then we will get to reading, if that is all right. And if it's not, there's not really anything I can do about it. I did. It was horrific. I did. Thank God for those incredibly brave people who stopped it being worse than it was. Does cloud saves? I know, but I don't know if they were switched on, Mezzine. That's the problem. That is the problem. How is it going, JT? Your Silk Song save? Reading stream, indeed. Indeedy. It's like a paint room. What does that mean? I was doing a stretch, Briscoe. I am okay. Thank you, it's new. It's an Aragorn 90s style oversized shirt. You know, the perfect example of a man. It's a hell of a good excuse to start a new game. I know, but if that save is gone, I'm going to take to my bed in a very Jane Austen era way. Hello, T. David. Is your favourite from the trio? I don't think you'll be the only one. I think that's amazing. And hello, Wooden Warrior. I love that. I mean, I don't know if I want to, but thank you. Okay, so Pride and Prejudice. They're what? Paranoid? Wait, does it still say Red Dead? Oh no, it still says Red Dead on my YouTube streams. Give me 1 second. Sorry guys, I should have changed those. That is on me. Apologies. We were going to play Red Dead. It all went wrong. Where are we? Right. Okay, we should be ready now. No worries. Enjoy your dinner. It's nice to see you. Thanks for coming to say hi. Pride and Prejudice. Okay, well that's good. I think it was just the what's it called? Like category. I hadn't changed. The 2 permadeath. You're gonna get them. That's crazy. Well done. That's very impressive and terrifying. My day was lovely, thank you, Raj. Hey. Thank you, Yusik. I can't read it properly. Where are you? I also bet Micah has something to do with the save. That rat. Red Dead Revolver on my PS4. I don't own it yet, but maybe you'll break me down if I don't have the save anymore. Pride and Prejudice Sandony, like a CSI spin-off.
Oh, friend. Oh, new friend.
Thank you for following Cover Time, Pete. I appreciate it. Hello, Hannah Smiles. It was supposed to be Red Dead. Bit of a saga. My save doesn't seem to exist anymore, so we've pivoted. I am going to read, yep. What was I going to say? I was going to say something that felt like it was important. My day, Yuvraj, it wasn't important, but I had a really nice day. I decorated the tree. I had therapy. I decorated my Christmas tree, and then I went round and very quickly saw my nephew and did some nephew sitting for my brother and sister-in-law who were busy, which was nice. Like, that's a distant third. You're dyeing a shirt? That's fun. It's going to be interesting. So far there's just been many conversations. So we can do a quick catch up. You mostly follow the Bennett family, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, who had 5 daughters. 5 daughters, I think, which obviously in the 1700s is terrible news because there's no son to pass your estate on to. They can't earn any money, and you have to marry them all off well. They're like, I think they're kind of upper middle class. And then the very exciting news of a wealthy bachelor coming to stay in an estate near their town that summer, I guess. And the oldest daughter, Jane, is the most handsome of the 5, and she catches his eye. But the book mainly follows the second daughter, Elizabeth, who is less traditionally beautiful for the time, but very intelligent and very spirited. It's Jane Austen's way of being like, hey, this is a woman with an opinion. How do you feel? Because obviously that was her. And it follows the family's attempts, basically. And it's very classic Jane Austen, with kind of insane wit to the point that it doesn't feel dated 250 years later. And just beautiful, beautiful writing. So yeah, at the moment they have Mr. Bingley, who's the one who's very well off, is staying in a country estate, and he brought his best friend, Mr. Darcy, who is very kind of cold and reserved. And then his sisters, who are very snobby, but they like Jane, but no one else. And she went to see him and she got sick, so she's been staying in their house because she was very unwell, and I think she's just getting well enough to go. And the last chapter, their distant cousin, Mr. Collins, has turned up. He's the one who will inherit the estate, and he's like a very kind of smarmy man who has become they don't call him a priest, I don't think. I can't remember what they call him. Preacher, maybe? And Mrs. Bennet, the mum, does not like him because he's going to take the house away and turf her daughters out. But thank you, Cover Time Pete. It's really nice to meet you. Not many people seem to do the reading. I think a lot of people do writing, but hello, Pastor Moles. Steve, I've heard he's stone cold. We're reading Pride and Prejudice, Nate. Possibly Curbs, possibly Pivot. It doesn't seem to exist on my PC. It should be on my SSD rather than my C drive, but it wasn't there. So we're going to have to see. Oh no, I hope you don't get ill, Banana. And hello, Azrael. It's been good, thank you. And thanks, Eric. Monsieur Darcy. My mum in the family chat today said to my auntie, she was like, Happy Jane Austen Day. And my auntie replied and said, don't you mean Happy Mr. Darcy Day? Hello, Benny Vidi Vici. Wait, I did it the wrong way around. No, I didn't. I hope that you're having a good day. Oh, I hope you have a good nap, Banana. I'm just going to have some, I made it so it's going to be really hot, but some of my tea. Hello, Pin Space. It is, thank you. How's your day? Sold off to a wealthy family. That would be, unfortunately, the dream back in the day. Oh, thank you for the hydrates, Heaven Smile and Dougal. Sorry I didn't see those. And also, I've just seen a 3-stream street you've rushed. That's impressive. The best Christmas tree. It's not, honestly. We really I really struggled to fit all the ornaments on this year, so it's a bit of a squeeze. I love it, but it's definitely not stylish. Oh, Banana. 7.5 more hours? Not here, you've only got 33 minutes here, Azrael. That's so exciting. I'm glad, Pin Space. My cup says, Kenny, it says Kent University, as in like a pun, because I went to Kent University in the UK and they gave every student one of these cups for free in the halls, and I loved the pun so much that I kept it. It's classic. The wrong link. Interesting. Thank you, Cover Time Pete. I will check that. It should just be the same as my
new friend.
thank you for subscribing. Oh, perfect. I will change that after the stream. Thank you. I was about to say it should just be the same username, but you already found me. My mum made a mushroom bourguignon. Ouvrage, it was delicious. Hello, David. Good evening, Batwoman. You're just in time. I know what random photo I will show, Azrael, because this, wait. Did I know you were UKC, Pastor Moles? It is funny. Hello, Quorthon. How you doing? I'll show you the one that I have. I will hide my nephew's face just because I'm scared of the internet. But you can still see the cute outfit. This is when I looked after him at a wedding for my brother and sister-in-law last year. But this is the picture I have looking at me when I'm streaming. So this will be the random one I show. He had like little trousers and suspenders and a little shirt because he was so tiny. And he's just the cutest. I'll see if I can get it to come into focus a bit more. Maybe not. But he's a beautiful boy, and so I have that facing me while I'm streaming. Although the bad news is, that's behind that photo is where the spider was living, and it's not there anymore, so I don't know where it's gone. Emma is a Jane Austen novel, so yeah, I'm guessing the film is based on that. A MySpace URL? Interesting. I will have to change that, thank you. She's amazing, Dan. A Jane Austen pun I should have done. I have not, Mr. Magnificent, no. Hey, well, what? I graduated in 2015. When were you there? Hello, Exiled. Thanks, Azrael. It's a t-shirt. It's a t-shirt, Batwoman. It's amazing. This one's Redheads. It's new. I love it so much. It's oversized. It's just the best. Thanks, Green Panther. I know. Nephew's a terror now. Mine's only 21 months and he's getting there. But in like the cutest way. MySpace and Bebo. So I didn't have MySpace, but I did have Bebo. 8 hours of pest control. Right. Shall we begin? We can stop in between chapters, and if you like have stuff you want to talk about, then we can absolutely do that. Like I said, Mr. Collins has arrived at the Bennet's house, and
you're joking. Not another one?
Whoa, Batwoman. Thank you so much. That was so lovely of you. Merry Christmas.
Oh,
I'm
friend.
gonna...
Oh, new friend.
Hello, Libby. Thank you for following. Thank you, Batwoman, for the gifted subs. What a lovely thing to do. I was gonna do the discount because I've got some hours to use up. Thank you so much. Oh, that sounds nice, Jordan. Bebo sending hearts for hearts. Those were the days. And your top friends and how political that was. Yeah, so Mr. Collins has arrived and they sat down to dinner. Oh, they're about to sit down to dinner, I believe. We can read the last paragraph of the last chapter just so we know where we are. But he said that, like, he's very aware that it's hard for his cousins because he can just turf them out once the dad pops his clogs. Oh, you got one, Vedi Vedi Vici. That's nice. Thank you, Batwoman. So he said they had the conversation, and then it just says he was interrupted by a summons to dinner, and the girls smiled on each other. They were not the only object of Mr. Collins's admiration. The hall, the dining room, and all its furniture were examined and praised, and his commendation of everything would have touched Mrs. Bennet's heart, but for the mortifying supposition of his viewing it all as his own future property. The dinner, too, in its turn, was highly admired, and he begged to know to which of his fair cousins the excellence of its cookery was owing. But here he was set right by Mrs. Bennet, who assured him with some asperity that they were very well able to keep a good cook, and that her daughters had nothing to do in the kitchen. He begged pardon for having displeased her. In a softened tone, she declared herself not at all offended, but he continued to apologise for about a quarter of an hour. And that's how the last chapter ended. So they're at dinner, and he's trying very hard to be, inoffensive. I think he's very, smarmy, basically, from what I understand. But 2018, yeah, you would have been, if you did a 3-year, you would have got there the year after I left. I think I went back to venue once when my friends were still there. I was a big venue gal. Ouch, those are my teeth. It's Pride and Prejudice, Yuvraj. Hello, Scorpio. How are you doing? I've been streaming at very bad times. A quarter of an hour of apologising, a rank amateur. I know. And that's supposed to make him look like, an over-apologiser. Those are rookie numbers. Hello, human. How you doing? Okay, we'll do a chapter and then we will catch up. So this is chapter 14. Apologies if my throat gives out. It's been a while since we've done a reading. Okay. During dinner. That's a good start, isn't it? During dinner, Mr. Bennet scarcely spoke at all, but when the servants were withdrawn, he thought it time to have some conversation with his guest, and therefore started a subject in which he expected him to shine, by observing that he seemed very fortunate in his patroness. Lady Catherine de Bourgh's attention to his wishes and consideration for his comfort appeared very remarkable. Mr. Bennet could not have chosen better. Mr. Collins was eloquent in her praise. The subject elevated him to more than usual solemnity of matter, and with a most important aspect, he protested that he had never in his life witnessed such behaviour in a person of rank, such affability and condescension, as he had himself experienced from Lady Catherine. She had been graciously pleased to approve of both the discourses, which he had already had the honour of preaching before her. She had also asked him twice to dine at Rosings, and had sent for him only the Saturday before to make her pool of quadrille in the evening. Lady Catherine was reckoned proud by many people he knew, but he had never seen anything but affability in her. She had always spoken to him as she would to any other gentleman. She made not the smallest objection to his joining in the society of the neighbourhood, nor to his leaving his parish occasionally for a week or two to visit his relations. She had even condescended to advise him to marry as soon as he could, provided he chose with discretion, and had once paid him a visit in his humble parsonage, where she had perfectly approved all the alterations he had been making, and had even vouchsafed to suggest some herself, some shelves in the closet upstairs. That is all very proper and civil, I am sure, said Mrs. Bennet, and I dare say she is a very agreeable woman. It is a pity that great ladies in general are not more like her. Does she live near you, sir? The garden in which stands my humble abode is separated only by a lane from Rosings Park, her ladyship's residence. I think you said she was a widow, sir. Has she any family? She has only one daughter, the heiress of Rosings, and of very extensive property. Ah, cried Mrs. Bennet, shaking her head, then she is better off than many girls. And what sort of young lady is she? Is she handsome? She is a most charming young lady indeed. Lady Catherine herself says that in point of true beauty, Miss de Bourgh is far superior to the handsomest of her sex, because there is that in her features which marks the young woman of distinguished birth. She is unfortunately of a sickly constitution, which has prevented her making that progress in many accomplishments, which she could not otherwise have failed of, as I am informed by the lady who superintended her education, and who still resides with them. But she is perfectly amiable, and often condescends to drive by my humble abode in her little phaeton and ponies. Has she been presented? I do not remember her name among the ladies at court. Her indifferent state of health unhappily prevents her being in town, and by that means, as I told Lady Catherine myself one day, has deprived the British court of its brightest ornament. Her ladyship seemed pleased with the idea, and you may imagine that I am happy on every occasion to offer those little delicate compliments which are always acceptable to ladies. I have more than once observed to Lady Catherine that her charming daughter seemed born to be a duchess, and the most elevated rank, instead of giving her consequence, would be adorned by her. These are the kind of little things which please her ladyship, and it is the sort of attention which I conceive myself peculiarly bound to pay. You judge very properly, said Mr. Bennet, and it is happy for you that you possess the talent of flattering with delicacy. May I ask whether these pleasing attentions proceed from the impulse of the moment, or are the result of previous study? They arise chiefly from what is passing at the time, and though I sometimes amuse myself with suggesting and arranging such little elegant compliments as may be adapted to ordinary occasions, I always wish to give them as unstudied an air as possible. Mr. Bennet's expectations were fully answered. His cousin was as absurd as he had hoped, and he listened to him with the keenest enjoyment, maintaining at the same time the most resolute composure of countenance, and except in an occasional glance at Elizabeth, requiring no partner in his pleasure. By tea time, however, the dose had been enough, and Mr. Bennet was glad to take his guest into the drawing-room again, and when tea was over, glad to invite him to read aloud to the ladies. Mr. Collins readily assented, and a book was produced, but on beholding it, for everything announced it to be from a circulating library, he started back, and begging pardon, protested that he never read novels. Kitty stared at him, and Lydia exclaimed. Other books were produced, and after some deliberation, he chose Fordyce's Sermons. Lydia gaped as he opened the volume, and before he had, with very monotonous solemnity, read 3 pages, she interrupted him with, "Do you know, mamma, that my Uncle Phillips talks of turning away Richard, and if he does, Colonel Forster will hire him. My aunt told me so herself on Saturday. I shall walk to Meryton tomorrow to hear more about it, and to ask when Mr. Denny comes back from town." Lydia was bid by her 2 eldest sisters to hold her tongue, but Mr. Collins, much offended, laid aside his book and said, "I have often observed how little young ladies are interested by books of a serious stamp, though written solely for their benefit. It amazes me, I confess, for certainly there can be nothing so advantageous to them as instruction, but I will no longer importune my young cousin." Then, turning to Mr. Bennet, he offered himself as his antagonist at backgammon. Mr. Bennet accepted the challenge, observing that he acted very wisely in leaving the girls to their own trifling amusements. Mrs. Bennet and her daughters apologised most civilly for Lydia's interruption, and promised that it should not occur again if he would resume his book. But Mr. Collins, after assuring them that he bore his young cousin no ill will, and should never resent her behaviour as any affront, seated himself at another table with Mr. Bennet, and prepared for backgammon. Nice. That sounds amazing, Texas. Hello, Andy. I do have a tea. I'm getting over the flu, so it's not the best. Hello, Akinoyo. My throat's going crazy. Sleep well, Yuvraj. And hello, Oxen. Can I recommend a book by Stephen King? I would love to read Stephen King, but it's still in copyright. So the reason I'm reading classics is because they are, what's the word? Like, publicly available. I can't remember what the word is. What was it? They belong to the public because it's been a certain number of years. There are a lot of books I really wish I could read, but they're not quite out of that yet, which is super lame. Public domain, thank you, baked potato. That's exactly what I was looking for. It's an old-fashioned way of speaking, and that's how they described it, Sky Shouter, that they were handsome. First floor chemistry guy. Wait, what was the first floor of chemistry? I feel like I used to go straight up the stairs to the cheese room. Always. If I went to chemistry, I was on the light-up dance floor. Thursday to Sunday as well. Oh, that's so rough, Scorpio. I'm so sorry. I'm glad you're feeling better now, though. I'm sworn to carry your burdens. Hello, Zero. I'm alright, thank you. How are you doing? I have read that book, Tejo. And I had to sleep with the light on for 2 weeks, even though I was 21. I hope you get some good rest, Scorpio, and yes, we'll catch up soon. The Iliad. Enchanté, Stevie. Thank you, Zachary. Public domain 70 years. Yeah, and I think the rules are different slightly in the US than they are in the UK, which makes it even more complicated. Exactly, Paul. The original Greek. We'd need Caesar. Hello, Darkblade. A copy in your car you're struggling through. That is impressive. Hello, Tyler. Right, let me just get a bit more comfy. Ouch. Or I'll just crack my knee instead. You too, Scorpio. There are a lot of words back and forth. So the thing that I was a bit worried about reading Jane Austen is because it's a lot of very kind of like witty, I guess banter. There's witty conversation backwards and forwards where they're very subtly kind of roasting each other a lot. And I was a bit worried that with me reading it, you'll lose some of that because it's not as clear when it's like a back and forth. Plus then you also have like the context, the historical context and all that stuff gets lost. But hopefully you can sort of get the gist of what's going on. We're going to read some more Oxen, sorry. I was just catching up with everyone. Thanks, Tyler. I love it so much. It's from Threadheads. They're a great company. Yeah, I just didn't want to miss too many people. Hello, Adam. Nice to see you. We're doing a reading stream because we can't find my Red Dead Redemption save after the PC issues. And also I was really tired, so this was the best option, unfortunately for you guys. Okay. Chapter 15. We'll catch up in a minute. Mr. Collins was not a sensible man, and the deficiency of nature had been but little assisted by education or society. The greatest part of his life having been spent under the guidance of an illiterate and miserly father, and though he belonged to one of the universities, he had merely kept the necessary terms, without forming at it any useful acquaintance. The subjection in which his father had brought him up had given him originally great humility of manner, but it was now a good deal counteracted by the self-conceit of a weak head, living in retirement, and the consequential feelings of early and unexpected prosperity. A fortunate chance had recommended him to Lady Catherine de Bourgh when the living of Hunsford was vacant, and the respect which he felt for her high rank, and his veneration for her as his patroness, mingling with a very good opinion of himself, of his authority as a clergyman, and his rights as a rector, made him altogether a mixture of pride and obsequiousness, self-importance and humility. Having now a good house and very sufficient income, he intended to marry, and in seeking a reconciliation with the Longbourn family, he had a wife in view, as he meant to choose one of the daughters, if he found them as handsome and amiable as they were represented by common report. This was his plan of amends, of atonement for inheriting their father's estate, and he thought it an excellent one, full of eligibility and suitableness, and excessively generous and disinterested on his own part. His plan did not vary on seeing them. Miss Bennet's lovely face confirmed his views, and established all his strictest notions of what was due to seniority, and for the first evening she was his settled choice. The next morning, however, made an alteration, for in a quarter of an hour's tete-a-tete with Mrs. Bennet before breakfast, a conversation beginning with his parsonage house, and leading naturally to the avowal of his hopes, that a mistress for it might be found at Longbourn, produced from her, amid very complacent smiles and general encouragement, a caution against the very Jane he had fixed on. As to her younger daughters, she could not take upon her to say. She could not positively answer, but she did not know of any prepossession. Her eldest daughter, she must just mention, she felt it incumbent on her to hint, was likely to be very soon engaged. Mr. Collins had only to change from Jane to Elizabeth, and it was soon done while Mrs. Bennet was stirring the fire. Elizabeth, equally next to Jane in birth and beauty, succeeded her, of course. Mrs. Bennet treasured up the hint, and trusted that she might soon have two daughters married, and the man whom she could not bear to speak of the day before, was now high in her good graces. Lydia's intention of walking to Meryton was not forgotten. Every sister except Mary agreed to go with her, and Mr. Collins was to attend them. At the request of Mr. Bennet, who was most anxious to get rid of him and have his library to himself, for thither Mr. Collins had followed him after breakfast, and there he would continue, nominally engaged with one of the largest folios in the collection, but really talking to Mr. Bennet, with little cessation, of his house and garden at Hunsford. Such doings discomposed Mr. Bennet exceedingly. In his library he had been always sure of leisure and tranquillity, and though prepared, as he told Elizabeth, to meet with folly and conceit in every other room of the house, he was used to be free from them there. His civility, therefore, was most prompt in inviting Mr. Collins to join his daughters in their walk, and Mr. Collins, being in fact much better fitted for a walker than a reader, was extremely well pleased to close his large book and go. In pompous nothings on his side, and civil assents on that of his cousins, their time passed till they entered Meryton. The attention of the younger ones was then no longer to be gained by him. Their eyes were immediately wandering up in the street in quest of the officers, and nothing less than a very smart bonnet, indeed, or a really new muslin in a shop window, could recall them. But the attention of every lady was soon caught by a young man, whom they had never seen before, of most gentlemanlike appearance, walking with an officer on the other side of the way. The officer was the very Mr. Denny, concerning whose return from London Lydia came to inquire, and he bowed as they passed. All were struck with the stranger's air, all wondered who he could be, and Kitty and Lydia, determined if possible to find out, led the way across the street, under pretence of wanting something in an opposite shop, and fortunately had just gained the pavement when the two gentlemen, turning back, had reached the same spot. Mr. Denny addressed them directly, and entreated permission to introduce his friend, Mr. Wickham, who had returned with him the day before from town, and he was happy to say had accepted a commission in their corps. This was exactly as it should be, for the young man wanted only regimentals to make him completely charming. His appearance was greatly in his favour. He had all the best part of beauty, a fine countenance, a good figure, and very pleasing address. The introduction was followed up on his side by a happy readiness of conversation, a readiness at the same time perfectly correct and unassuming, and the whole party was still standing and talking together very agreeably when the sound of horses drew their notice, and Darcy and Bingley was seen riding down the street. On distinguishing the ladies of the group, the two gentlemen came directly towards them, and began the usual civilities. Bingley was the principal spokesman, and Miss Bennet the principal object. He was then, he said, on his way to Longbourn, on purpose to inquire after her. Mr. Darcy corroborated it with a bow, and was beginning to determine not to fix his eyes on Elizabeth, when they were suddenly arrested by the sight of the stranger. And Elizabeth, happening to see the countenance of both as they looked at each other, was all astonishment at the effect of the meeting. Both changed colour. One looked white, the other red. Mr. Wickham, after a few moments, touched his hat, a salutation which Mr. Darcy just deigned to return. What could be the meaning of it? It was impossible to imagine. It was impossible not to long to know. In another minute, Mr. Bingley, but without seeming to have noticed what passed, took leave and rode on with his friend. Mr. Denny and Mr. Wickham walked with the young ladies to the door of Mr. Phillips's house, and then made their bows, in spite of Miss Lydia's pressing entreaties that they would come in, and even in spite of Mrs. Phillips's throwing up the parlour window and loudly seconding the invitation. Mrs. Phillips was always glad to see her nieces, and the two eldest, from their recent absence, were particularly welcome, and she was eagerly expressing her surprise at their sudden return home, which, as their own carriage had not fetched them, she should have known nothing about, if she had not happened to see Mr. Jones's shop-boy in the street, who had told her that they were not to send any more draughts to Netherfield, because the Miss Bennets were come away, when her civility was claimed towards Mr. Collins by Jane's introduction of him. She received him with her very best politeness, which he returned with as much more, apologising for his intrusion, without any previous acquaintance with her, which he could not help flattering himself, however, might be justified by his relationship to the young ladies who introduced him to her notice. Mrs. Phillips was quite awed by such an excess of good breeding, but her contemplation of one stranger was soon put an end to by exclamations and inquiries about the other, of whom, however, she could only tell her nieces what they already knew. That Mr. Denny had brought him from London, and that he was to have a lieutenant's commission in the Shire. She had been watching him the last hour, she said, as he walked up and down the street, and had Mr. Wickham appeared, Kitty and Lydia would certainly have continued the occupation, but unluckily no one passed the windows now except a few of the officers, who in comparison with the stranger were become stupid, disagreeable fellows. Some of them were to dine with the Phillipses the next day, and their aunt promised to make her husband call on Mr. Wickham and give him an invitation also, if the family from Longbourn would come in the evening. This was agreed to, and Mrs. Phillips protested that they would have a nice, comfortable, noisy game of lottery tickets, and a little bit of hot supper afterwards. The prospect of such delights was very cheering, and they parted in mutual good spirits. Mr. Collins repeated his apologies in quitting the room, and was assured with unwearying civility that they were perfectly needless. As they walked home, Elizabeth related to Jane what she had seen pass between the two gentlemen, but though Jane would have defended either or both had they appeared to be wrong, she could no more explain such behaviour than her sister. Mr. Collins on his return highly gratified Mrs. Bennet by admiring Mrs. Phillips's manners and politeness. He protested that except Lady Catherine and her daughter, he had never seen a more elegant woman, for she had not only received him with the utmost civility, but had even pointedly included him in her invitation for the next evening, although utterly unknown to her before, something he supposed might be attributed to his connection with them, but yet he had never met with so much attention in the whole course of his life. Hello, Nick. Your Tomb Raider 100% playthrough in 2 days? That is wild. What else are you doing on Skyrim? Hello, Tony. That happens to me as well, Emma. And I'm just taking a break after each chapter. Hello, Alex. How you doing? And thank you, Vinny Vidivici. Hello, Mr. Neverryan. And Bust. Hello, Max. We're just reading. We're doing a reading stream because it's Jane Austen Day. Hi, Pastel. How are you doing? Welcome to Pride and Prejudice. If it's easier, TJ, I can sum up a little bit like what happened, because obviously it is kind of old-fashioned, and a lot of it, like that chapter, is basically they went into town because Mr. Collins was driving Mr. Bennet crazy, because Mr. Bennet likes his alone time and he thinks Mr. Collins is very silly, and so he suggested very kindly that he walked his daughters into town. They got into town. The two young ones are like obsessed because there's loads of military officers in the town at the moment, and they went in there all excited to see them, and bumped into two in particular, which was Mr. Wickham and Mr. Denny, I think they said. And then while they were talking to them, and Mr. Wickham's super handsome, while they were talking to them, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley came into town because they were going to go all the way to the Bennet's house to check on Jane, and came over to say hi. And then Mr. Darcy and Mr. Wickham, a look passed between them, and they noticed one another, and one of them went white and one of them went red. So there's something going on, and Elizabeth noticed it because she's smart, and but she can't figure out what happened. She just knows that something happened. And then they went in to see their aunt, who is also obsessed with all the officers, and that's pretty much all that happened in that chapter, but there's just a lot of talking. Hello, Joel. Oh, nice, Pastel. I hope you get home safely and have a decent drive. She's amazing, Max. She, considering it's like the 250th year of her birth, she writes, it's still so modern. She was incredible. Really, truly incredible. And she published under her own name, whereas a lot of women back then had to publish under male names. because they were heavily criticised if they wrote, about anything of substance, basically. And she just published and was successful because she was that good. That's true, Paul. I forgot about that. Mr. Darcy and Mr. Wickham have a crush on each other. They're going to kiss next chapter. You never know. We can discuss those terms, Beerstorm. Convoluted. I would say, Pride and Prejudice is like a quintessential romance. But probably social, just because of the historical context now. It's like a social commentary. She very much was commenting on society at the time. A bit like when we read Picture of Dorian Gray, and Oscar Wilde did the same. This book isn't quite 250 years old, Savage Gaming. Let's have a look. I was like, 1995. 1813 it was first published, so 112 years old. Wait, that makes absolutely no sense, because she would have been like 90 when she published it. This must be this version, unless they didn't publish it. Let's have a look, because it does have a chronology. Pride and Prejudice published in 1813. Am I really bad at maths? I'm horrendous at maths. It's 200. And this is why we read and don't do maths. Mary Shelley was slightly after. Hell yeah, Pastor Miles. What a game changer. Her husband, Percy, was from my town. And he was also a real dude. Hello, Phil. Skyrim will be back. We were supposed to be playing Red Dead today, but technical difficulties, so we're just doing a reading stream instead. I'm sorry. Frankenstein or Modern Prometheus. That book's incredible. On the Time Society. That's it. That film is based on the book, but it's not as accurate as the series. The TV series from 1995 is more accurate and is phenomenal. Plus it's Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy, which you really can't disagree with. Hola, Louise. It's not the 1900s anymore. True. What is math? It's a confusing and frightening witchcraft, as the Vikings thought, Nick. Prime numbers. Great Oscar Wilde quote, Tash. Ozymandias. Hello, it's Pinocchio. Right, let's read the next chapter. I do feel like my throat is... Oh, this is a long one. Wish me luck. Let's hope we make it through. I think it's Mr. Darcy who went white, and I think it's Mr. Wickham who went red, but I could be wrong. Not the Red Dead we were expecting, maybe the Red Dead we deserve. Mr. Darcy's red face, the game saver's dead. Poetic and deeply upsetting. Thank you, Max. We were talking about fantasy books the other day, actually. Someone was asking for recommendations, and it's not really my genre. Not out of any reason, I just haven't got there yet. Okay. Chapter 16. Actually, really quickly, I'm going to put some lip balm on because I feel like I'm breathing over like sandpaper. I need to get more of a cozy setup for this. I would love to have, in the front room we have an actual fireplace. I would love to sit in front of a fire. But it would be noisy in there and I'd have to move everything. It's a phenomenal book, Aaron. Dragon Age: The Stolen Throne. Ooh, okay. We're reading today, Pumpkinhead. Hello, Jeffrey. Oh, no, I have, Paul. I've read all of them. I used to love them. Not enough zombies, Steve. Thank you for the hydrate, Nick. Pastor Miles, that was my book in nursery. Nursery used to call me Little Ofsted, which my mum is like, it's because you were so bright as a child. I'm like, no, it's because I had no friends and I just used to sit in the library at nursery and read. I was reading The Hungry Caterpillar. It wasn't like I was some kind of savant. But that book got me through some stuff. It's really nice to have you, Aaron. Your streak? Did it go? I was streaming at weird times, Steve. That's on me. Those are fancy, you're right, Paul. I'm dumb. I've also read some of the Narnia books, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But I feel like they're such obvious ones that... Oh, there you go. The best saga of fantasy books. No, London's beautiful, Von. I have, you're right. Okay. Chapter 16. As no objection was made to the young people's engagement with their aunt, and all Mr. Collins's scruples of leaving Mr. and Mrs. Bennet for a single evening during his visit were most steadily resisted, the coach conveyed him and his 5 cousins at a suitable hour to Meryton, and the girls had the pleasure of hearing, as they entered the drawing-room, that Mr. Wickham had accepted their uncle's invitation, and was then in the house. When this information was given, and they had all taken their seats, Mr. Collins was at leisure to look around him and admire, and he was so much struck with the size and the furniture of the apartment that he declared he might almost have supposed himself in the small summer breakfast parlour at Rosings, a comparison that did not at first convey much gratification. But when Mrs. Phillips understood from him what Rosings was, and who was its proprietor, when she had listened to the description of only one of Lady Catherine's drawing-rooms, and found that the chimney-piece alone had cost £800, she felt all the force of the compliment, and would hardly have resented a comparison with the housekeeper's room. In describing to her all the grandeur of Lady Catherine and her mansion, with occasional digressions in praise of his own humble abode, and the improvements it was receiving, he was happily employed until the gentlemen joined them, and he found in Mrs. Phillips a very attentive listener, whose opinion of his consequence increased with what she heard, and who was resolving to retail it all among her neighbours as soon as she could. Trunelli, thank you so much for using your Twitch Prime. I really appreciate that. Nice to see you. Thank you for resubscribing. Resubscribing.
Old friend! Old new friend!
And hello, Slates. Thank you for following.
Old friend!
Where were we? He was happily employed until the gentlemen joined them, and he found in Mrs. Phillips a very attentive listener, whose opinion of his consequence increased with what she heard, and who was resolving to retail it all among her neighbours as soon as she could. To the girls, who could not listen to their cousin, and who had nothing to do but to wish for an instrument, and examine their own indifferent imitations of china on the mantelpiece, the interval of waiting appeared very long. It was over at last, however. The gentlemen did approach, and when Mr. Wickham walked into the room, Elizabeth felt that she had neither been seeing him before, nor thinking of him since, with the smallest degree of unreasonable admiration. The officers of the shire were in general a very creditable, gentlemanlike set, and the best of them were of the present party, but Mr. Wickham was as far beyond them all in person, countenance, air, and walk, as they were superior to the broad-faced, stuffy Uncle Phillips, breathing port wine, who followed them into the room. Mr. Wickham was the happy man towards whom almost every female eye was turned, and Elizabeth was the happy woman by whom he finally seated himself, and the agreeable manner in which he immediately fell into conversation, though it was only on its being a wet night, and on the probability of a rainy season, made her feel that the commonest, dullest, most threadbare topic might be rendered interesting by the skill of the speaker. With such rivals for the notice of the fair as Mr. Wickham and the officers, Mr. Collins seemed likely to sink into insignificance. To the young ladies he certainly was nothing, but he had still at intervals a kind listener in Mrs. Phillips, and was, by her watchfulness, most abundantly supplied with coffee and muffins. When the card tables were placed, he had an opportunity of obliging her in return, by sitting down to whist. "I know little of the game at present," said he, "but I shall be glad to improve myself, for in my situation of life..." Mrs. Phillips was very thankful for his compliance, but could not wait for his reason. Mr. Wickham did not play at whist, and with ready delight was he received at the other table between Elizabeth and Lydia. At first there seemed danger of Lydia's engrossing him entirely, for she was a most determined talker. But being likewise extremely fond of lottery tickets, she soon grew too much interested in the game, too eager in making bets and exclaiming after prizes, to have attention for anyone in particular. Allowing for the common demands of the game, Mr. Wickham was therefore at leisure to talk to Elizabeth, and she was very willing to hear him, though what she chiefly wished to hear she could not hope to be told, the history of his acquaintance with Mr. Darcy. She dared not even mention that gentleman. Her curiosity, however, was unexpectedly relieved. Mr. Wickham began the subject himself. He inquired how far Netherfield was from Meryton, and, after receiving her answer, asked in an hesitating manner how long Mr. Darcy had been staying there. "About a month," said Elizabeth, and then, unwilling to let the subject drop, added, "He is a man of very large property in Derbyshire, I understand." "Yes," replied Wickham. "His estate there is a noble one, a clear 10,000 per annum. You could not have met with a person more capable of giving you certain information on that head than myself, for I have been connected with his family in a particular manner from my infancy." Elizabeth could not but look surprised. "You may well be surprised, Miss Bennet, at such an assertion after seeing, as you probably might, the very cold manner of our meeting yesterday. Are you much acquainted with Mr. Darcy?" "As much as I ever wished to be," cried Elizabeth warmly. "I have spent 4 days in the same house with him, and I think him very disagreeable." "I have no right to give my opinion," said Wickham, "as to his being agreeable or otherwise. I am not qualified to form one. I have known him too long and too well to be a fair judge. It is impossible for me to be impartial. But I believe your opinion of him would in general astonish, and perhaps you would not express it quite so strongly anywhere else. Here you are in your own family." "Upon my word, I say no more here than I might say in any house in the neighbourhood, except Netherfield. He is not at all liked in Hertfordshire. Everybody is disgusted with his pride. You will not find him more favourably spoken of by anyone." "I cannot pretend to be sorry," said Wickham, after a short interruption, "that he, or that any man, should not be estimated beyond their deserts. But with him, I believe it does not often happen. The world is blinded by his fortune and consequence, or frightened by his high and imposing manners, and sees him only as he chooses to be seen. I should take him, even on my slight acquaintance, to be an ill-tempered man." Wickham only shook his head. "I wonder," said he, at the next opportunity of speaking, "whether he is likely to be in this country much longer." "I do not at all know, but I heard nothing of his going away when I was at Netherfield. I hope your plans in favour of the Shire will not be affected by his being in the neighbourhood." "Oh no, it is not for me to be driven away by Mr. Darcy. If he wishes to avoid seeing me, he must go. We are not on friendly terms, and it always gives me pain to meet him, but I have no reason for avoiding him but what I might proclaim to all the world, a sense of very great ill-usage and most painful regrets at his being what he is. His father, Miss Bennet, the late Mr. Darcy, was one of the best men that ever breathed, and the truest friend I ever had, and I can never be in company with this Mr. Darcy without being grieved to the soul by 1,000 tender recollections. His behaviour to myself has been scandalous, but I verily believe I could forgive him anything and everything, rather than his disappointing the hopes and disgracing the memory of his father." Elizabeth found the interest of the subject increase, and listened with all her heart, but the delicacy of it prevented farther inquiry.
Not another one?
Thank you, Overy, for resubscribing. 18 months. Welcome. Mr. Wickham began to speak on more general topics. Meryton, the neighbourhood, the society, appearing highly pleased with all that he had yet seen, and speaking of the latter especially with gentle but very intelligible gallantry. It was the prospect of constant society, and good society, he added, which was my chief inducement to enter the Shire. I knew it to be a most respectable, agreeable corps, and my friend Denny tempted me farther by his account of their present quarters, and the very great attentions and excellent acquaintance Meryton had procured them. Society, I own, is necessary to me. I have been a disappointed man, and my spirits will not bear solitude. I must have employment and society. A military life is not what I was intended for, but circumstances have now made it eligible. The church ought to have been my profession. I was brought up for the church, and I should at this time have been in possession of a most valuable living, had it pleased the gentleman we were speaking of just now. Indeed. Yes, the late Mr. Darcy bequeathed me the next presentation of the best living in his gift. He was my godfather, and excessively attached to me. I cannot do justice to his kindness. He meant to provide for me amply, and thought he had done it. But when the living fell, it was given elsewhere. Good heavens, cried Elizabeth, but how could that be? How could his will be disregarded? Why did you not seek legal redress? There was just such an informality in the terms of the bequest as to give me no hope from law. A man of honour could not have doubted the intention, but Mr. Darcy chose to doubt it, or to treat it as a merely conditional recommendation, and to assert that I had forfeited all claim to it by extravagance, imprudence, in short, anything or nothing. Certain it is that the living became vacant 2 years ago, exactly as I was of an age to hold it, and that it was given to another man. And no less certain is it that I cannot accuse myself of having really done anything to deserve to lose it. I have a warm, unguarded temper, and I may perhaps have sometimes spoken my opinion of him and to him too freely. I can recall nothing worse, but the fact is that we are very different sort of men, and that he hates me. This is quite shocking. He deserves to be publicly disgraced. Sometime or other he will be, but it shall not be by me. Till I can forget his father, I can never deny or expose him. Elizabeth honoured him for such feelings, and thought him handsomer than ever as he expressed them. But what, said she, after a pause, can have been his motive? What can have induced him to behave so cruelly? A thorough, determined dislike of me, a dislike which I cannot but attribute in some measure to jealousy. Had the late Mr. Darcy liked me less, his son might have borne with me better. But his father's uncommon attachment to me irritated him, I believe, very early in life. He had not a temper to bear the sort of competition in which we stood, the sort of preference which was often given me. I had not thought Mr. Darcy so bad as this. Though I have never liked him, I had not thought so very ill of him. I had supposed him to be despising his fellow creatures in general, but did not suspect him of descending to such malicious revenge, such injustice, such inhumanity as this. After a few minutes' reflection, however, she continued, I do remember his boasting one day at Netherfield of the implacability of his resentments, of his having an unforgiving temper. His disposition must be dreadful. I will not trust myself on the subject, replied Wickham. I can hardly be just to him. Elizabeth was again deep in thought, and after a time exclaimed, to treat in such a manner the godson, the friend, the favourite of his father. She could have added, a young man too like you, whose very countenance may vouch for your being amiable. But she contented herself with, and one too who had probably been his own companion from childhood, connected together, as I think you said, in the closest manner. We were born in the same parish, within the same park. The greatest part of our youth was passed together. Inmates of the same house, sharing the same amusements, objects of the same parental care. My father began life in the profession which your uncle, Mr. Phillips, appears to do so much credit to. But he gave up everything to be of use to the late Mr. Darcy, and devoted all his time to the care of the Pemberley property. He was most highly esteemed by Mr. Darcy, a most intimate, confidential friend. Mr. Darcy often acknowledged himself to be under the greatest obligations to my father's active superintendence, and when immediately before my father's death, Mr. Darcy gave him a voluntary promise of providing for me, I am convinced that he felt it to be as much a debt of gratitude. Hello, Zashenko. Thank you for following. And when immediately before my father's death, Mr. Darcy gave him a voluntary promise of providing for me, I am convinced that he felt it to be as much a debt of gratitude to him as of affection to myself. How strange, cried Elizabeth. How abominable. I wonder that the very pride of this Mr. Darcy has not made him just to you, if from no better motive that he should not have been too proud to be dishonest. For dishonesty I must call it. I thought this was there's still a little bit of the chapter, and I need to have a drink, but also I feel like I've missed loads of people saying hi. And no, Richard, yeah, it's Pride and Prejudice. But thank you. She did do Sense and Sensibility and Emma as well, and Mansfield Park. German Whist, 13 card standard. There is a film, Wanted Major Beef, and there's also a TV series which is better. Oh, you mean Master and Commander, sorry. And hello, Charles, how are you doing? No worries, Pingo, I hope you get some good sleep. And yeah, we're on chapter 16 at the moment. Ovary, how are you doing today? Hello, Acid Rain Dancer. And hello, Tarnished Flames. And Wes, it's nice to see you. Welcome. Thanks, Max. Hello, David. I'm alright, thank you. How are you today? Okay, right, sorry, I'll carry on. I just needed to slightly rehydrate. It is wonderful, replied Wickham, for almost all his actions may be traced to pride, and pride has often been his best friend. It has connected him nearer with virtue than any other feeling. But we are none of us consistent, and in his behaviour to me there were stronger impulses even than pride. Can such abominable pride as his have ever done him good? Yes, it has often led him to be liberal and generous, to give his money freely, to display hospitality, to assist his tenants and relieve the poor. Family pride and filial pride, for he is very proud of what his father was, have done this. Not to appear to disgrace his family, to degenerate from the popular qualities, or lose the influence of the Pemberley house, is a powerful motive. He has also brotherly pride, which with some brotherly affection makes him a very kind and careful guardian of his sister, and you will hear him generally cried up as the most attentive and best of brothers. What sort of a girl is Miss Darcy? He shook his head. I wish I could call her amiable. It gives me pain to speak ill of a Darcy, but she is too much like her brother. Very, very proud. As a child she was affectionate and pleasing, and extremely fond of me, and I have devoted hours and hours to her amusement, but she is nothing to me now. She is a handsome girl, about 15 or 16, and I understand highly accomplished. Since her father's death, her home has been London, where a lady lives with her, and superintends her education. After many pauses and many trials of other subjects, Elizabeth could not help reverting once more to the first, and saying, I am astonished at his intimacy with Mr. Bingley. How can Mr. Bingley, who seems good humour itself, and is, I really believe, truly amiable, be in friendship with such a man? How can they suit each other? Do you know Mr. Bingley? Not at all. He is a sweet-tempered, amiable, charming man. He cannot know what Mr. Darcy is. Probably not, but Mr. Darcy can please where he chooses. He does not want abilities. He can be a conversable companion if he thinks it worth his while. Among those who are at all his equals in consequence, he is a very different man from what he is to the less prosperous. His pride never deserts him, but with the rich he is liberal-minded, just sincere, rational, honourable, and perhaps agreeable, allowing something for fortune and figure. The whist party soon afterwards breaking up, the players gathered round the other table, and Mr. Collins took his station between his cousin Elizabeth and Mrs. Phillips. The usual inquiries as to his success were made by the latter. It had not been very great. He had lost every point, but when Mrs. Phillips began to express her concern thereupon, he assured her with much earnest gravity that it was not of the least importance, that he considered the money as a mere trifle, and begged she would not make herself uneasy. I know very well, madam, said he, that when persons sit down to a card table, they must take their chance of these things, and happily I am not in such circumstances as to make 5 shillings any object. There are undoubtedly many who could not say the same, but thanks to Lady Catherine de Bourgh, I am removed far beyond the necessity of regarding little matters. Mr. Wickham's attention was caught, and after observing Mr. Collins for a few moments, he asked Elizabeth in a low voice whether her relation were very intimately acquainted with the family of de Bourgh. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, she replied, has very lately given him a living. I hardly know how Mr. Collins was first introduced to her noticed, but he certainly has not known her long. You know, of course, that Lady Catherine de Bourgh and Lady Anne Darcy were sisters, consequently that she's aunt to the present Mr. Darcy. No, indeed I did not. I knew nothing at all of Lady Catherine's connections. I never heard of her existence till the day before yesterday. Her daughter, Miss de Bourgh, will have a very large fortune, and it is believed that she and her cousin will unite the two estates. This information made Elizabeth smile, as she thought of poor Miss Bingley. Vain indeed must be all her attentions, vain and useless her affection for his sister, and her praise of himself, if he were already self-destined to another. Mr. Collins, said she, speaks highly both of Lady Catherine and her daughter, but from some particulars that he has related of her ladyship, I suspect his gratitude misleads him, and that in spite of her being his patroness, she is an arrogant, conceited woman. I believe her to be both in a great degree, replied Wickham. I have not seen her for many years, but I very well remember that I never liked her, and that her manners were dictatorial and insolent. She has the reputation of being remarkably sensible and clever, but I rather believe she derives part of her abilities from her rank and fortune, part from her authoritative manner, and the rest from the pride of her nephew, who chooses that everyone connected with him should have an understanding of the first class. Elizabeth allowed that he had given a very rational account of it, and they continued talking together with mutual satisfaction till supper put an end to cards, and gave the rest of the ladies their share of Mr. Wickham's attentions. There could be no conversation in the noise of Mrs. Phillips's supper party, but his manners recommended him to everybody. Whatever he said was said well, and whatever he did, done gracefully. Elizabeth went away with her head full of him. She could think of nothing but of Mr. Wickham, and of what he had told her all the way home. But there was not time for her even to mention his name as they went, for neither Lydia nor Mr. Collins were once silent. Lydia talked incessantly of lottery tickets, of the fish she had lost and the fish she had won, and Mr. Collins, in describing the civility of Mr. and Mrs. Phillips, protesting that he did not in the least regard his losses at whist, enumerating all the dishes at supper, and repeatedly fearing that he crowded his cousins, had more to say than he could well manage before the carriage stopped at Longbourn House. Thanks, Wes. How are you doing? I'm glad you're good, David. Not at all, Adam. Thanks for hanging out. And hello, Broken. Bedtime story. Sorry, Sasso. I hope the night shift is going alright. Exactly, it's Pinocchio. Oh, I don't want to speak badly about them, but let me have this epic bitch about this one man. And his, 15-year-old sister as well. What a slate. A green monster. Yeah, Max. So last time I put orchestral music from the late 1700s on, but loads of it is copyrighted, even though it's 100, 200-year-old classical music. So I can't play it safely, which is super annoying. So I thought we'd go for Skyrim ambience instead. I want to keep going. Okay, the next chapter's very short, so my throat will be able to make it through that. Thank you, Liggy. I'll save the comments until we've got a decent break. Thank you, McSleazy. That's very kind. Yeah, feel free to still type. I'll check in after each chapter, but I appreciate it. I certainly do. I do play Skyrim. Thank you for the hydrate, Dougal. I guess so. Or I think some people have got licenses to more famous ones. It's kind of crazy. I think YouTube is extra careful about licensing as well. Yeah! Wait, I'll show you. I'll stand up over it. I've been saving it. I got it ages ago, and I've been saving wearing it for a rainy day, and today was the day. Look at it. It's so good. I love it. Thank you, Sasso. Threadheads again. The legends. Renew copyright after a century. Yeah, it must be certain arrangements, annoyingly. And then copyright-free music I looked up is playlists, which would then mean adverts in between them, so. Austen movie? I don't know. I think the only one I've seen is Pride and Prejudice. Thanks, that's a rain dancer. Feliz Navidad, Lolas Los. Change the music for the VOD. Interesting. It's only because YouTube will sometimes cut off your live if it senses copyright music. So I don't want to risk that when we just want to read. I mean, we're reading now, Joel, just to try to get there, you know. Isn't enough photos. I know, there's only 3. I think there was a different one, but I didn't like how it looked as much, but it did have more pictures. YouTube, yeah. YouTube are very difficult. Twitch is definitely easier to work around, but YouTube is a pain. Rest well. Wes, thank you for coming to say hi. Hope you have a good evening. Yeah, I think that's what Mezzine is saying, Overy, as well. But it's because I'm live to YouTube. I didn't want it to cut out. I hope it goes well, Sasso. It's nice to see you. No, we're reading, Kevin. We're reading. Thanks, Adam. Yeah. Alright, chapter 17. Yes, 17. It's because they do it in Roman numerals, and my Roman numerals are a bit shaky. Right. Elizabeth related to Jane the next day what had passed between Mr. Wickham and herself. Jane listened with astonishment and concern. She knew not how to believe that Mr. Darcy could be so unworthy of Mr. Bingley's regard, and yet it was not in her nature to question the veracity of a young man of such amiable appearance as Wickham. The possibility of his having really endured such unkindness was enough to interest all her tender feelings, and nothing therefore remained to be done but to think well of them both, to defend the conduct of each, and throw into the account of accident or mistake whatever could not be otherwise explained. They have both, said she, been deceived, I dare say, in some way or other, of which we can form no idea. Interested people have perhaps misrepresented each to the other. It is, in short, impossible for us to conjecture the causes or circumstances which may have alienated them, without actual blame on either side. Very true indeed. And now, my dear Jane, what have you got to say in behalf of the interested people who have probably been concerned in the business? Do you clear them, too, or we shall be obliged to think ill of somebody? Laugh as much as you choose, but you will not laugh me out of my opinion. My dearest Lizzie, do but consider in what a disgraceful light it places Mr. Darcy, to be treating his father's favourite in such a manner, one whom his father had promised to provide for. It is impossible. No man of common humanity, no man who had any value for his character, could be capable of it. Can his most intimate friends be so excessively deceived in him? Oh no. I can much more easily believe Mr. Bingley's being imposed on, than that Mr. Wickham should invent such a history of himself as he gave me last night. Names, facts, everything mentioned without ceremony. If it be not so, let Mr. Darcy contradict it. Besides, there was truth in his looks. It is difficult indeed. It is distressing. One does not know what to think. I beg your pardon. One knows exactly what to think. But Jane can think with certainty on only one point. That Mr. Bingley, if he had been imposed on, would have much to suffer when the affair became public. The 2 young ladies were summoned from the shrubbery, where this conversation passed, by the arrival of some of the very persons of whom they had been speaking. Mr. Bingley and his sisters came to give their personal invitation for the long-expected ball at Netherfield, which was fixed for the following Tuesday. The 2 ladies were delighted to see their dear friend again, called it an age since they had met, and repeatedly asked what she had been doing with herself since their separation. To the rest of the family they paid little attention, avoiding Mrs. Bennet as much as possible, saying not much to Elizabeth, and nothing at all to the others. They were soon gone again, rising from their seats with an activity which took their brother by surprise, and hurrying off as if eager to escape from Mrs. Bennet's civilities. The prospect of the Netherfield ball was extremely agreeable to every female of the family. Mrs. Bennet chose to consider it as given in compliment to her eldest daughter, and was particularly flattered by receiving the invitation from Mr. Bingley himself, instead of a ceremonious card. Jane pictured to herself a happy evening in the society of her two friends, and the attentions of their brother, and Elizabeth thought with pleasure of dancing a great deal with Mr. Wickham, and of seeing a confirmation of everything in Mr. Darcy's looks and behaviour. The happiness anticipated by Catherine and Lydia depended less on any single event or any particular person, for though they each, like Elizabeth, meant to dance half the evening with Mr. Wickham, he was by no means the only partner who could satisfy them. And a ball was at any rate a ball, and even Mary could assure her family that she had no disinclination for it. "While I can have mornings to myself," said she, "it is enough. I think it no sacrifice to join occasionally in evening engagements. Society has claims on us all, and I profess myself one of those who consider intervals of recreation and amusement as desirable for everybody." Elizabeth's spirits were so high on the occasion, that though she did not often speak unnecessarily to Mr. Collins, she could not help asking him whether he intended to accept Mr. Bingley's invitation, and if he did, whether he would think it proper to join in the evening's amusement. Max, thank you for using your Twitch Prime. I really appreciate it. And thank you for following. Welcome. That's lovely of you, thank you. And hello, S.Vision. Where were we? And if he did, whether he would think it proper to join in the evening's amusement. And she was rather surprised to find that he entertained no scruple whatever on that head, and was very far from dreading a rebuke either from the Archbishop or Lady Catherine de Bourgh by venturing to dance. "I am by no means of opinion, I assure you," said he, "that a ball of this kind, given by a young man of character, to respectable people, can have any evil tendency, and I am so far from objecting to dancing myself, that I shall hope to be honoured with the hands of all my fair cousins in the course of the evening, and I take this opportunity of soliciting yours, Miss Elizabeth, for the first two dances especially, a preference which I trust my cousin Jane will attribute to the right cause, and not to any disrespect for her." Elizabeth felt herself completely taken in. She had fully proposed being engaged by Wickham for those very dances, and to have Mr. Collins instead. Her liveliness had been never worse timed. There was no help for it, however. Mr. Wickham's happiness and her own was perforce delayed a little longer, and Mr. Collins's proposal accepted with as good a grace as she could. She was not the better pleased with his gallantry, from the idea it suggested of something more. It now first struck her that she was selected from among her sisters as worthy of being the mistress of Hunsford Parsonage, and of assisting to form a quadrille table at Rosings, in the absence of more eligible visitors. The idea soon reached to conviction as she observed his increasing civilities towards herself, and heard his frequent attempt at a compliment on her wit and vivacity. And though more astonished than gratified herself by this effect of her charms, it was not long before her mother gave her to understand that the probability of their marriage was exceedingly agreeable to her. Elizabeth, however, did not choose to take the hint, being well aware that a serious dispute must be the consequence of any reply. Mr. Collins might never make the offer. Until he did, it was useless to quarrel about him. If there had not been a Netherfield ball to prepare for and talk of, the younger Miss Bennets would have been in a pitiable state at this time, for from the day of the invitation to the day of the ball, there was such a succession of rain as prevented their walking to Meryton once. No aunt, no officers, no news could be sought after. The very shoe roses for Netherfield were got by proxy. Even Elizabeth might have found some trial of her patience in weather, which totally suspended the improvement of her acquaintance with Mr. Wickham, and nothing less than a dance on Tuesday could have made such a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday endurable to Kitty and Lydia. Woof. The next chapter's like 8 pages. Oh, homemade nachos, delicious. And hello, always come back. And Cloud District Snob, nice to see you. Due to ads, yeah, that is the worst. There shouldn't be, if you've subbed, Max, there shouldn't be adverts, but I can completely understand being over on YouTube instead. Hello, Real. Can't get the last one. They should be marked on your map, Big Dave. Thanks, Dave the Bucko fan. A320 Operation Book. Words going in and out. There's a lot going on, to be fair, Wanted Major Beef. It's floaty. Thank you for the hydrate, Max. I can actually probably finish my tea. And a stretch. What one should we do? Because we've done a toe touch. We could do... could do shoulders. Hello, Coffee Ghost. It's really nice to have you here. We'll be back at Skyrim tomorrow. We were actually supposed to be playing Red Dead, but ouch, that's really hurting, that shoulder. Twitch has better resolution. This is what I keep hearing. But it shouldn't give you adverts now that you've subscribed. That's sort of the deal. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Acid Rain Dancer. Shoulders slash back. Nice. Philly. Sleep well, Jordan. Thanks for hanging out. You don't want to know what happens at the dance? You're not gripped? Oh, next shoulder. Sleep well. I think maybe we'll do the next long chapter, and then I think my throat will probably give up on me. It's 20 to 1 for me. That feels nice. Ooh. Fell asleep while listening with my AirPods in. Sometimes when you take them out, it hurts so much when you slept with them in. I'm sorry. Unless you wanted to sleep, in which case, I'm glad you got some rest. It's the danger of this stream. It'll just send you to sleep. Not really much that you missed in that chapter. It's basically Wickham having a gossip. Although that was the last chapter. This one is that Elizabeth told Jane everything she'd heard. Then Bingley came to the house to invite them personally to his ball. Mr. Collins is like, hey cousin, want to dance with me? And then it rained for 4 days and everyone's miserable because they didn't get to go out and spy on all the officers and get into town. They've all been stuck inside. Being zombies in this story. I have many, Lois. Oasis, just the flu. A nice half-hour nap. I'm surprised I didn't dream that chapter. Just loads of conversation back and forth. 20 to 1. So 0040. As in midnight. 40 minutes past midnight. I'm not stretching, I just fell down. Stretching your arms. 9th level sleep. I wish that existed. Okay, we'll probably take little breaks throughout this chapter because it is a very long one. That's nice, Dave. I hope you get some good rest. Good night. Okay. Chapter 18. Till Elizabeth entered the drawing room at Netherfield and looked in vain for Mr. Wickham among the cluster of red coats there assembled. A doubt of his being present had never occurred to her. The certainty of meeting him had not been checked by any of those recollections that might not unreasonably have alarmed her. She had dressed with more than usual care, and prepared, in the highest spirits for the conquest of all that remained unsubdued of his heart, trusting that it was not more than might be won in the course of the evening. But in an instant arose the dreadful suspicion of his being purposely admitted for Mr. Darcy's pleasure in the Bingley's invitation to the officers, and though this was not exactly the case, the absolute fact of his absence was pronounced by his friend Mr. Denny, to whom Lydia eagerly applied, and who told them that Wickham had been obliged to go to town on business the day before, and was not yet returned, adding with a significant smile, "I do not imagine his business would have called him away just now, if he had not wished to avoid a certain gentleman here." This part of his intelligence, though unheard by Lydia, was caught by Elizabeth, and as it assured her that Darcy was not less answerable for Wickham's absence than if her first surmise had been just, every feeling of displeasure against the former was so sharpened by immediate disappointment that she could hardly reply with tolerable civility to the polite inquiries which he directly afterwards approached to make. Attention, forbearance, patience with Darcy was injury to Wickham. She was resolved against any sort of conversation with him, and turned away with a degree of ill humour, which she could not wholly surmount even in speaking to Mr. Bingley, whose blind partiality provoked her. But Elizabeth was not formed for ill humour, and though every prospect of her own was destroyed for the evening, it could not dwell long on her spirits, and having told all her griefs to Charlotte Lucas, whom she had not seen for a week, she was soon able to make a voluntary transition to the oddities of her cousin, and to point him out to her particular notice. The 2 first dances, however, brought a return of distress. They were dances of mortification. Mr. Collins, awkward and solemn, apologising instead of attending, and often moving wrong without being aware of it, gave her all the shame and misery which a disagreeable partner for a couple of dances can give. The moment of her release from him was ecstasy. She danced next with an officer, and had the refreshment of talking of Wickham, and of hearing that he was universally liked. When those dances were over, she returned to Charlotte Lucas, and was in conversation with her, when she found herself suddenly addressed by Mr. Darcy, who took her so much by surprise in his application for her hand, that, without knowing what she did, she accepted him. He walked away again immediately, and she was left to fret over her own want of presence of mind. Charlotte tried to console her. "I dare say you will find him very agreeable." "Heaven forbid! That would be the greatest misfortune of all, to find a man agreeable whom one is determined to hate. Do not wish me such an evil." When the dancing recommenced, however, and Darcy approached to claim her hand, Charlotte could not help cautioning her in a whisper not to be a simpleton, and allow her fancy for Wickham to make her appear unpleasant in the eyes of a man 10 times his consequence. Elizabeth made no answer, and took her place in the set, amazed at the dignity to which she was arrived in being allowed to stand opposite to Mr. Darcy, and reading in her neighbours' looks their equal amazement in beholding it. They stood for some time without speaking a word, and she began to imagine that their silence was to last through the 2 dances, and at first was resolved not to break it, till suddenly fancying that it would be the greater punishment to her partner to oblige him to talk, she made some slight observation on the dance. He replied, and was silent again. After a pause of some minutes, she addressed him a second time. "It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. I talked about the dance, and you ought to make some kind of remark on the size of the room, or the number of couples." He smiled, and assured her that whatever she wished him to say should be said. "Very well, that reply will do for the present. Perhaps by and by I may observe that private balls are much pleasanter than public ones, but now we may be silent." "Do you talk by rule, then, while you are dancing?" "Sometimes. One must speak a little, you know. It would look odd to be entirely silent for half an hour together, and yet, for the advantage of some, conversation ought to be so arranged as that they may have the trouble of saying as little as possible." "Are you consulting your own feelings in the present case, or do you imagine that you are gratifying mine?" "Both," replied Elizabeth archly, "for I have always seen a great similarity in the turn of our minds. We are each of an unsocial, taciturn disposition, unwilling to speak unless we expect to say something that will amaze the whole room, and be handed down to posterity with all the eclat of a proverb. I don't know what's going on with me, I'm sorry. This is no very striking resemblance of your own character, I am sure, said he. How near it may be to mine, I cannot pretend to say. You think it a faithful portrait, undoubtedly. I must not decide on my own performance. He made no answer, and they were again silent till they had gone down the dance. When he asked her if she and her sisters did not very often walk to Meryton, she answered in the affirmative, and, unable to resist the temptation, added, When you met us there the other day, we had just been forming a new acquaintance. The effect was immediate. A deeper shade of hauteur overspread his features, but he said not a word, and Elizabeth, though blaming herself for her own weakness, could not go on. At length Darcy spoke, and in a constrained manner said, Mr. Wickham is blessed with such happy manners as may ensure his making friends. Whether he may be equally capable of retaining them is less certain. He has been so unlucky as to lose your friendship, replied Elizabeth with emphasis, and in a manner which he is likely to suffer from all his life. Darcy made no answer, and seemed desirous of changing the subject. At that moment, Sir William Lucas appeared close to them, meaning to pass through the set to the other side of the room, but on perceiving Mr. Darcy, he stopped with a bow of superior courtesy to compliment him on his dancing and his partner. I have been most highly gratified indeed, my dear sir. Such very superior dancing is not often seen. It is evident that you belong to the first circles. Allow me to say, however, that your fair partner does not disgrace you, and that I must hope to have this pleasure often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event, my dear Miss Eliza, glancing at her sister and Bingley, shall take place. What congratulations will then flow in! I appeal to Mr. Darcy, but let me not interrupt you, sir. You will not thank me for detaining you from the bewitching converse of that young lady, whose bright eyes are also upbraiding me. The latter part of this address was scarcely heard by Darcy, but Sir William's allusion to his friend seemed to strike him forcibly, and his eyes were directed with a very serious expression towards Bingley and Jane, who were dancing together. Recovering himself, however, shortly, he turned to his partner and said, Sir William's interruption has made me forget what we were talking of. I do not think we were speaking at all. Sir William could not have interrupted any two people in the room who had less to say for themselves. We have tried 2 or 3 subjects already without success, and what we are to talk of next, I cannot imagine. What think you of books? Said he, smiling. Books? Oh no, I'm sure we never read the same, or not with the same feelings. I am sorry you think so, but if that be the case, there can at least be no want of subject. We may compare our different opinions. No, I cannot talk of books in a ballroom. My head is always full of something else. The present always occupies you in such scenes, does it? Said he, with a look of doubt. Yes, always, she replied, without knowing what she said, for her thoughts had wandered far from the subject, as soon afterwards appeared by her suddenly exclaiming, I remember hearing you once say, Mr. Darcy, that you hardly ever forgave, that your resentment, once created, was unappeasable. You are very cautious, I suppose, as to its being created. I am, he said with a firm voice. And never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice. I hope not. It is particularly incumbent on those who never change their opinion to be secure of judging properly at first. May I ask to what these questions tend? Merely to the illustration of your character, said she, endeavouring to shake off her gravity. I am trying to make it out. And what is your success? She shook her head. I do not get on at all. I hear such different accounts of you as puzzle me exceedingly. Hello, Jeremy. Thank you for subscribing. We could probably take a little bit of a break. It's a long chapter. Hello, CZ. You certainly did. Ooh. That's exciting, Paul. Get some good sleep, Max. And you, Cover Time Pete. It was nice to meet you. Thank you, Vandal. Can you imagine, Max? I want this to be celebrated like it's a football match. Thank you. You should do. That's lovely of you to say, Liggy. And hello, Everty. Lovely, Bradley. The identity of my champion? What do you mean, Kieran? Hello, Annalise. How you doing? Yeah, we're doing a reading stream, which isn't the most normal. I'd be terribly average and that won't do. It just takes so long to say anything. That's the only problem. It takes a long time in Old Entish. Thank you, studio. Okay, we'll carry on. I just needed to rehydrate slightly. It is a long chapter. I do think it might be the entire ball. I can readily believe, answered he gravely, that report may vary greatly with respect to me, and I could wish, Miss Bennet, that you were not to sketch my character at the present moment, as there is reason to fear that the performance would reflect no credit on either. But if I do not take your likeness now, I may never have another opportunity. I would by no means suspend any pleasure of yours, he coldly replied. She said no more, and they went down the other dance and parted in silence, on each side dissatisfied, though not to an equal degree. For in Darcy's breast there was a tolerable, powerful feeling towards her, which soon procured her pardon, and directed all his anger against another. They had not long separated when Miss Bingley came towards her, and with an expression of civil disdain thus accosted her. So, Miss Eliza, I hear you are quite delighted with George Wickham. Your sister has been talking to me about him, and asking me 1,000 questions, and I find that the young man forgot to tell you, among his other communications, that he was the son of old Wickham, the late Mr. Darcy's steward. Let me recommend you, however, as a friend, not to give implicit confidence to all his assertions, for as to Mr. Darcy's using him ill, it is perfectly false, for, on the contrary, he has always been remarkably kind to him, though George Wickham has treated Mr. Darcy in a most infamous manner. I do not know the particulars, but I know very well that Mr. Darcy is not in the least to blame, that he cannot bear to hear George Wickham mentioned, and that though my brother thought he could not well avoid including him in an invitation to the officers, he was excessively glad to find that he had taken himself out of the way. His coming into the country at all is a most insolent thing indeed, and I wonder how he could presume to do it. I pity you, Miss Eliza, for this discovery of your favourite's guilt, but really, considering his descent, one could not expect much better. His guilt and his descent appear by your account to be the same, said Elizabeth angrily, for I have heard you accuse him of nothing worse than of being the son of Mr. Darcy's steward, and of that, I can assure you, he informed me himself. I beg your pardon, replied Miss Bingley, turning away with a sneer. Excuse my interference, it was kindly meant. Insolent girl, said Elizabeth to herself. You are much mistaken if you expect to influence me by such a paltry attack as this. I see nothing in it but your own wilful ignorance and the malice of Mr. Darcy. She then sought her eldest sister, who had undertaken to make inquiries on the same subject of Bingley. Jane met her with a smile of such sweet complacency, a glow of such happy expression, as sufficiently marked how well she was satisfied with the occurrences of the evening. Elizabeth instantly read her feelings, and at that moment solicitude for Wickham, resentment against his enemies, and everything else gave way before the hope of Jane's being in the fairest for happiness. I want to know, said she, with a countenance no less smiling than her sister's, what you have learnt about Mr. Wickham. But perhaps you have been too pleasantly engaged to think of any third person, in which case you may be sure of my pardon. No, replied Jane, I have not forgotten him, but I have nothing satisfactory to tell you. Mr. Bingley does not know the whole of his history, and is quite ignorant of the circumstances which have principally offended Mr. Darcy, but he will vouch for the good conduct, the probity and honour of his friend, and is perfectly convinced that Mr. Wickham has deserved much less attention from Mr. Darcy than he has received, and I am sorry to say that by his account, as well as his sister's, Mr. Wickham is by no means a respectable young man. I am afraid he has been very imprudent, and has deserved to lose Mr. Darcy's regard. Mr. Bingley does not know Mr. Wickham himself. No, he never saw him till the other morning at Meryton. This account then is what he has received from Mr. Darcy. I am perfectly satisfied, but what does he say of the living? He does not exactly recollect the circumstances, though he has heard them from Mr. Darcy more than once, but he believes that it was left to him, conditionally only. Hello, Crispy Nightmare. Thank you for following. And hello, Beaker. It's nice to see you. It is, Ziga. I don't think so, Kieran. I think you're all right. I think you haven't actually managed to spoil it for yourself. Amazing, Damon. So much better. It's nice to see you. Oh, and thank you, Crispy Nightmare, for the hydrate. Persuasion, that's one I forgot. I hope you're doing well today. I have not a doubt of Mr. Bingley's sincerity, said Elizabeth warmly, but you must excuse my not being convinced by assurances only. Mr. Bingley's defence of his friend was a very able one, I dare say, but since he is unacquainted with several parts of the story, and has learnt the rest from that friend himself, I shall venture still to think of both gentlemen as I did before. She then changed the discourse to one more gratifying to each, and on which there could be no difference of sentiment. Elizabeth listened with delight to the happy, though modest hopes which Jane entertained of Bingley's regard, and said all in her power to heighten her confidence in it. On their being joined by Mr. Bingley himself, Elizabeth withdrew to Miss Lucas, to whose inquiry after the pleasantness of her last partner she had scarcely replied, before Mr. Collins came up to them, and told her with great exultation that he had just been so fortunate as to make a most important discovery. I have found out, said he, by a singular accident, that there is now in the room a near relation of my patroness. I happened to overhear the gentleman himself mentioning to the young lady who does the honours of this house the names of his cousin, Mr. Berg, and of her mother, Lady Catherine. How wonderfully these sorts of things occur! Who would have thought of my meeting with, perhaps, a nephew of Lady Catherine de Bourgh in this assembly? I am most thankful that the discovery is made in time for me to pay my respects to him, which I am now going to do, and trust he will excuse my not having done it before. My total ignorance of the connection must plead my apology. You are not going to introduce yourself to Mr. Darcy? Indeed I am. I shall entreat his pardon for not having done it earlier. I believe him to be Lady Catherine's nephew. It will be in my power to assure him that her ladyship was quite well yesterday se'night. Se'night? That's a word I've not seen before. Elizabeth tried hard to dissuade him from such a scheme, assuring him that Mr. Darcy would consider his addressing him without introduction as an impertinent freedom, rather than a compliment to his aunt, that it was not in the least necessary there should be any notice on either side, and that if it were, it must belong to Mr. Darcy, the superior in consequence, to begin the acquaintance. Mr. Collins listened to her with a determined air of following his own inclination, and when she ceased speaking, replied thus: My dear Miss Elizabeth, I have the highest opinion in the world of your excellent judgment in all matters within the scope of your understanding, but permit me to say that there must be a wide difference between the established forms of ceremony amongst the laity and those which regulate the clergy. Forgive me leave to observe that I consider the clerical office as equal in point of dignity with the highest rank in the kingdom, provided that a proper humility of behaviour is at the same time maintained. You must therefore allow me to follow the dictates of my conscience on this occasion, which leads me to perform what I look on as a point of duty. Pardon me for neglecting to profit by your advice, which on every other subject shall be my constant guide, though in the case before us I consider myself more fitted by education and habitual study to decide on what is right than a young lady like yourself. And with a low bow he left her to attack Mr. Darcy, whose reception of his advances she eagerly watched, and whose astonishment at being so addressed was very evident. Her cousin prefaced his speech with a solemn bow, and though she could not hear a word of it, she felt as if hearing it all, and saw in the motion of his lips the words apology, Hunsford, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh. It vexed her to see him expose himself to such a man. Mr. Darcy was eyeing him with unrestrained wonder, and when at last Mr. Collins allowed him time to speak, replied with an air of distant civility. Mr. Collins, however, was not discouraged from speaking again, and Mr. Darcy's contempt seemed abundantly increasing with the length of his second speech, and at the end of it he only made him a slight bow and moved another way. Mr. Collins then returned to Elizabeth. I have no reason, I assure you, said he, to be dissatisfied with my reception. Mr. Darcy seemed much pleased with the attention. He answered me with the utmost civility, and even paid me the compliment of saying that he was so well convinced of Lady Catherine's discernment as to be certain she could never bestow a favour unworthily, It was really a very handsome thought. Upon the whole, I am much pleased with him. As Elizabeth had no longer any interest of her own to pursue, she turned her attention almost entirely on her sister and Mr. Bingley, and the train of agreeable reflections which her observations gave birth to made her perhaps almost as happy as Jane. She saw her in idea settled in that very house in all the felicity which a marriage of true affection could bestow, and she felt capable, under such circumstances, of endeavouring even to like Bingley's two sisters. Her mother's thoughts, she plainly saw, were bent the same way, and she determined not to venture near her, lest she might hear too much. When they sat down to supper, therefore, she considered it a most unlucky perverseness which placed them within one of each other, and deeply was she vexed to find that her mother was talking to that one person, Lady Lucas, freely, openly, and of nothing else but of her expectation that Jane would be soon married to Mr. Bingley. It was an animating subject.
New friend.
Thank you for subscribing, Cooked Sam.
Friend.
It was an animating subject, and Mrs. Bennet seemed incapable of fatigue while enumerating the advantages of the match. His being such a charming young man, and so rich, and living but 3 miles from them, were the first points of self-gratulation. And then it was such a comfort to think how fond the two sisters were of Jane, and to be certain that they must desire the connection as much as she could do. It was, moreover, such a promising thing for her younger daughters, as Jane's marrying so greatly must throw them in the way of other rich men. And lastly, it was so pleasant at her time of life to be able to consign her single daughters to the care of their sister, that she might not be obliged to go into company more than she liked. It was necessary to make this circumstance a matter of pleasure, because on such occasions it is the etiquette. But no one was less likely than Mrs. Bennet to find comfort in staying at home, at any period of her life. She concluded with many good wishes that Lady Lucas might soon be equally fortunate, though evidently and triumphantly believing there was no chance of it. In vain did Elizabeth endeavour to check the rapidity of her mother's words, or persuade her to describe her felicity in a less audible whisper, for to her inexpressible vexation she could perceive that the chief of it was overheard by Mr. Darcy, who sat opposite to them. Her mother only scolded her for being nonsensical. We'll take a little bit of a break there, because that is a long chapter. You're okay. No need to apologise. I'm sorry that it seemed like it was spoilt. And hello to Ohio, Kenneth. And yes, I did get laser eye surgery. Highly recommend. YouTube is wild. Son-in-law's brother. What? Son-in-law's brother. Ah. Laurence Olivier, Colin Firth as Darcy. Wait, I didn't even know there was a Laurence Olivier version. I always see Colin Firth. It's always Colin Firth. I know a lot of people like Matthew McFadden from the Keira Knightley film, but Colin Firth is the one for me. He's the Mr. Darcy. You're out. Nice, Liggy. Listening to me? Good. And thank you for the hydrate, Nick. I will. It was expensive. Veni Vidi Vici. I went to the Best Eye Hospital because I didn't want to risk it. You can get it for like, I mean, there are some places that do it really cheap. On average, it was about $3,500. Mine was more, but it's literally the next day. As a rain dancer. Mine was the next day. I mean, it was sore, but I could see. It was crazy. Yeah, it was a lot easier. TV show was much better. 100% agree. 100%. I love Alison Steadman as Mrs. Bennet. They're all so well acted. Okay, let's carry on. What is Mr. Darcy to me, pray, that I should be afraid of him? I am sure we owe him no such particular civility as to be obliged to say nothing he may not like to hear. For heaven's sake, madam, speak lower. What advantage can it be to you to offend Mr. Darcy? You will never recommend yourself to his friend by so doing. Nothing that she could say, however, had any influence. Her mother would talk of her views in the same intelligible tone. Elizabeth blushed, and blushed again with shame and vexation. She could not help frequently glancing her eye at Mr. Darcy, though every glance convinced her of what she dreaded, for though he was not always looking at her mother, she was convinced that his attention was invariably fixed by her. The expression of his face changed gradually from indignant contempt to a composed and steady gravity. Hello, Derek. Thank you for following. I went to... I'm going to sneeze. It's gone back in my nose. Nope, it hasn't. I went to... What's it called? The Eye Hospital in London? I can't remember what it's called. Saint somethings. The Eye Hospital in London. It'll come to me at some point, probably midway through this chapter. But that's where I went. They were really good. But it is not cheap. Fake sneezes when they fizz back into your nose. It was lovely to see Veni Vidi Vici get some good sleep. Where were we? Okay. At length, however, Mrs. Bennet had no more to say, and Lady Lucas, who had been long yawning at the repetition of delights which she saw no likelihood of sharing, was left to the comforts of cold ham and chicken. Elizabeth now began to revive, but not long was the interval of tranquillity, for when supper was over, singing was talked of, and she had the mortification of seeing Mary, after very little entreaty, preparing to oblige the company. By many significant looks and silent entreaties did she endeavour to prevent such a proof of complaisance, but in vain. Mary would not understand them. Such an opportunity of exhibiting was delightful to her, and she began her song. Elizabeth's eyes were fixed on her with most painful sensations, and she watched her progress through the several stanzas with an impatience which was very ill rewarded at their close, for Mary, on receiving amongst the thanks of the table, the hint of a hope that she might be prevailed on to favour them again, after the pause of half a minute, began another. Mary's powers were by no means fitted for such a display. Her voice was weak, and her manner affected. Elizabeth was in agonies. She looked at Jane to see how she bore it, but Jane was very composedly talking to Bingley. She looked at his two sisters, and saw them making signs of derision at each other, and at Darcy, who continued, however, impenetrably grave. She looked at her father to entreat his interference, lest Mary should be singing all night. He took the hint, and when Mary had finished her second song, said aloud, "That will do extremely well, child. You have delighted us long enough. Let the other young ladies have time to exhibit." Mary, though pretending not to hear, was somewhat disconcerted, and Elizabeth, sorry for her, and sorry for her father's speech, was afraid her anxiety had done no good. Others of the party were now applied to. "If I," said Mr. Collins, "were so fortunate as to be able to sing, I should have great pleasure, I am sure, in obliging the company with an air, for I consider music as a very innocent diversion, and perfectly compatible with the profession of a clergyman. I do not mean, however, to assert that we can be justified in devoting too much of our time to music, for there are certainly other things to be attended to. The rector of a parish has much to do. In the first place, he must make such an agreement for tithes as may be beneficial to himself, and not offensive to his patron. He must write his own sermons, and the time that remains will not be too much for his parish duties, and the care and improvement of his dwelling, which he cannot be excused from making as comfortable as possible. And I do not think it of light importance that he should have attentive and conciliatory manners towards everybody, especially towards those to whom he owes his preferment. I cannot acquit him of that duty, nor could I think well of the man who should omit an occasion of testifying his respect towards anybody connected with the family." And with a bow to Mr. Darcy, he concluded his speech, which had been spoken so loud as to be heard by half the room. Many stared, many smiled, but no one looked more amused than Mr. Bennet himself, while his wife seriously commended Mr. Collins for having spoken so sensibly, and observed in a half whisper to Lady Lucas that he was a remarkably clever, good kind of young man. To Elizabeth it appeared that had her family made an agreement to expose themselves as much as they could during the evening, it would have been impossible for them to play their parts with more spirit or finer success, and happy did she think it for Bingley and her sister that some of the exhibition had escaped his notice, and that his feelings were not of a sort to be much distressed by the folly which he must have witnessed. That his two sisters and Mr. Darcy, however, should have such an opportunity of ridiculing her relations was bad enough, and she could not determine whether the silent... Thank you, Acid Rain Dancer, so much for resubscribing. That's so lovely of you. Thank you. That his two sisters and Mr. Darcy, however, should have such an opportunity of ridiculing her relations was bad enough, and she could not determine whether the silent contempt of the gentlemen or the insolent smiles of the ladies were more intolerable. The rest of the evening brought her little amusement. She was teased by Mr. Collins, who continued most perseveringly by her side, and though he could not prevail with her to dance with him again, she put it out of her power to dance with others. In vain did she entreat him to stand up with somebody else, and offered to introduce him to any young lady in the room. He assured her that as to dancing, he was perfectly indifferent to it, that his chief object was by delicate attentions to recommend himself to her, and that he should therefore make a point of remaining close to her the whole evening. There was no arguing upon such a project. She owed her greatest relief to her friend Miss Lucas, who often joined them, and good-naturedly engaged Mr. Collins's conversation to herself. She was at least free from the offence of Mr. Darcy's farther notice, though often standing within a very short distance of her, quite disengaged, he never came near enough to speak. She felt it to be the probable consequence of her allusions to Mr. Wickham, and rejoiced in it. The Longbourn party were the last of all the company to depart, and by a manoeuvre of Mrs. Bennet had to wait for their carriages a quarter of an hour after everybody else was gone, which gave them time to see how heartily they were wished away by some of the family. Mrs. Hurst and her sister scarcely opened their mouths, except to complain of fatigue, and were evidently impatient to have the house to themselves. They repulsed every attempt of Mrs. Bennet at conversation, and by so doing threw a languor over the whole party, which was very little relieved by the long speeches of Mr. Collins, who was complimenting Mr. Bingley and his sisters on the elegance of their entertainment, and the hospitality and politeness which had marked their behaviour to their guests. Darcy said nothing at all. Mr. Bennet, in equal silence, was enjoying the scene. Mr. Bingley and Jane were standing together, a little detached from the rest, and talked only to each other. Elizabeth preserved as steady a silence as either Mrs. Hurst or Miss Bingley, and even Lydia was too much fatigued to utter more than the occasional exclamation of "Lord, how tired I am!" accompanied by a violent yawn. When at length they arose to take leave, Mrs. Bennet was most pressingly civil in her hope of seeing the whole family soon at Longbourn, and addressed herself particularly to Mr. Bingley, to assure him how happy he would make them by eating a family dinner with them at any time, without the ceremony of a formal invitation. Bingley was all grateful pleasure, and he readily engaged for taking the earliest opportunity of waiting on her, after his return from London, whither he was obliged to go the next day for a short time. Mrs. Bennet was perfectly satisfied, and quitted the house under the delightful persuasion that, allowing for the necessary preparations of settlements, new carriages, and wedding clothes, she should undoubtedly see her daughter settled at Netherfield in the course of 3 or 4 months. Of having another daughter married to Mr. Collins, she thought with equal certainty, and with considerable, though not equal, pleasure. Elizabeth was the least dear to her of all her children, and though the man and the match were quite good enough for her, the worth of each was eclipsed by Mr. Bingley and Netherfield. Hello, Mystic. That was a long one. A lot going on. Thank you, PR Grant. When the prices come down, I know. You would think, with how many people get it done, that it would be cheaper by now, but why can't I remember the name of the hospital? Let me really quickly look it up, Pastor Moles. Moorfields, not Saints anything. Moorfields, I went to. It is a big book. Nice lyrics, Kieran. Those are idols. Oh, you said Moorfield, so I've just seen that. Pastor Miles, I'm sorry. 50 Shades of Grey next. That book is such trash. Oh, thank you, Soul Knight. They the TV series is also really good. It's much more faithful to the book. Don't be sorry, Acid Rain Dancer. It's so lovely of you. I'm sorry that you got stuck in ads. Yeah, Liggy, honestly, it's so good. Ooh. I'm so sorry, Banana. I'm sorry, guys. On Old Street. Yeah, they do. So they have the normal and then the and the private as well. Obviously they do all the accidental eye stuff. Accidental? Like all the NHS stuff. I feel like we've probably had enough for now. The next chapter is normal length, but Dr. Yappy. No, it's a Lord of the Rings shirt. It's Aragorn. It terrified me as well, Kieran. Thank you, Alex. Just boot up Skyrim. No, thank you, CZ. I would, but I'm really tired today. Thank you for subscribing, Tired. I am, in fact. And a stretch. What other one should we do? We've touched toes. Whoa! Thank you, Savage Gaming. Merry Christmas. That's lovely of you. My hair is growing, isn't it? When we play... Oh, good question, good question. It does need to get added in. Redeem, go to bed. What was I saying? W. It did really scare me too, Kieran, and I was so anxious just before it, but you really can't feel or see anything because it's all like out of the range of your pupils, so it's kind of in your blind spots, so you really can't see anything scary, and then your eyes are numbed, so as long as you don't think about it, then you're fine. And then it's such quick recovery. It's crazy what they can do. It is, Andrew, it is. But yeah, the whole thing, I mean, I've talked about it before and I'm more than happy to talk about it for people who want to go and get it done but they're nervous, but I feel like it does also creep people out, so it's probably not the one. That was Jane Austen Day. I cannot. Lotus Lost, I cannot. It's 250 years since she was born. She was epic. She succeeded at a time when she wasn't supposed to. And she was insanely bright and wrote with such a beautiful command of language. And I think is genuinely funny. Like, it tickles me, this book, and that is impressive for something that is so far removed in time, for the humour to still translate and still seem so clever. I think it's crazy. Minus 1.25. That was my left eye, I think. Minus 1.25 and minus 1.5, but then they got worse and I just wasn't going and getting my prescription done because it's too much effort. I will also play Dead Space, I promise. Where did it go? I know, Andrew. To take out contacts. Oof. Alright. I will be streaming tomorrow. I will stream Skyrim. I need to sort out my PC. I need to fix whatever's going on with it still, and then try to find my Red Dead save somewhere, because I cannot accept that I have lost that entire game. The year your country came into existence. Wow, that's a very cool fact. 7.5. My dad's was really... I think my dad was legally blind. That is crazy. I am Andrew. It's great. It's my favourite. It's just an old camera, 7. So Pastor Miles, I did an update and it bricked my PC and then it broke my C drive, and we couldn't even do a clean install until Ovaries Macca's wonderful husband, Nathaniel, managed to kind of force it. I also had hours of help from Mezzine and Texas, but then I didn't properly activate Windows, and now it's like locking me out of my own PC and doesn't help me fix the fact that I've got a product key, but it's a different product. Anyway, it's locked me out of my PC basically, so I don't have full functionality. And I had to do a clean install, so I lost a lot of stuff, which may include my Red Dead Redemption 2 entire save. So I need to sort all of that out. I've got a lot to figure out about it. Maybe Becky. I shouldn't have done because it was on my SSD, but who knows. It wasn't even a secure boot. It was literally just the update bricked it, and then it's trapped me in the BIOS menu, and it wouldn't even let me clear my thing. It was crazy. Thank you, CZ. I hope so too. Whoa, that's crazy, Kieran. That's so cool. I am Andrew just for now, but I'll be back on tomorrow. Ooh. That is wild. Sour Night. So I was playing it on Epic, and they do have saves, but I don't know if they were switched on, and it didn't even think it was installed on my PC when it should have been, so it's all, yeah. I don't think you can get it again, Hugh, but they'll only degrade like they would have done if you were aging, and if I get 10 years of not having to wear glasses, I'll take it. Thank you, Banana. I'm glad, Dougal. I don't usually do just reading. I usually do it at the end of a stream, but this one just wasn't quite, wasn't normal. An excuse to play again. I was at 93%. I don't know if I have it in me. Because I put the music on in the background because it's not copyrighted, Kieran. Crime and Punishment. I haven't got to it, but I know that Dostoevsky is supposed to be an incredible writer. We usually stream gaming, Andrew, and then a little bit of reading at the end of streams. I haven't been doing it recently because I've been streaming too late, but we hang out and game together. So at the moment I'm playing Skyrim and Red Dead Redemption maybe to restart. Let me thank people properly before we go. On the YouTube side, I want to thank Usick and Savage Gaming, both of them, for their super chats. That's really lovely of you. And then on Twitch, we've got Acid Rain Dancer, Max, Ovary, Tunelli for resubscribing, Batwoman for 5 gifted community subs, McSleazy for the bits, and I think that's everyone today. And then also obviously all of you for hanging out, especially in a slightly unorthodox reading stream. I really appreciate it. It wasn't the plan, and then I was just so tired that, and also Jane Austen Day, you know. It would be rude not to, considering we are already reading one of her books, not to have honoured her today. So thanks for giving me your time and hanging out with us, and I hope it was bearable. It is live, Terrell. Nice, Kieran. Well, I hope you get some sleep. Thank you for the bits, Mezzine, and thank you for subscribing, Andrew.
Oh, friend.
Big up, Jane. Crime and Punishment and the Old Man and the Sea. Okay. Thank you, Reginus, and thank you for being here. Thank you, guys. A reading stream every week. We usually do them at the end of streams, but I've just been streaming so late that it's not been happening. And thank you, Ziga, as well. Very early for me, Steve. I did well. Ah, love to NYC. Thank you, Joel. Right, I will see you guys hopefully soon. Twitch friends, if you hang around, we'll just see if there's anyone to go raid and say hi to. There might not be, but we'll just have a look. Thank you, Terrell. And thank you, Banana. I hope you feel better. And yeah, I'll be streaming tomorrow, so hopefully see some of you then. Take care. Bye.